Hey, it is Tiki Technical Tuesday, and we have the very first kiln load of bisqued Dead Bastard mugs. Now, these artist-proof mugs exist for one reason and one reason only, and that is glaze testing. So I've only got 5 of these testers. Can I make more? Of course I can, but I'm hoping that 5 is enough because I'm not going to do my initial glaze tests on these. I'm going to use my handy dandy little glaze testing critters. Years ago, I was teaching English in Japan, and my students gave me this as a going away gift when we moved back to the States. I absolutely love this little guy, and I thought he would make a great glaze testing shape. So I made a mold of him, and then I cast a whole bunch of them, which I used to test glazes. And today we're going to test 3 glazes. We're testing 2 by Mako and 1 by Spectrum. Yes, I use commercially prepared glazes in the studio. I know that there are people who make their own glazes. I have nothing but the utmost respect for them. Personally, I just don't have that little spark inside of my heart that makes me want to experiment and explore making glazes. I use commercial glazes. I know they're food safe, and they're pretty repeatable for long editions. I don't have to worry too much about color. So why are we testing these glazes? Well, part of it is to see what they look like, but we kind of already know that because we bought them at the store and we saw sample tiles. The main thing I want to find out is how do they spray through my gun? We're going to be doing a lot of these. I have a planned edition of 200 for this mug, plus some bonus versions. And I want to find a glaze that sprays well, that I can put on a lot of mugs at a comfortable amount of time. Okay, slight change of plans. I know I said I was going to use a Spectrum glaze. I have nothing against Spectrum glazes, but this is a Shino, and as a rule, I have a rule in the studio. If it says Shino, it's a no-no, just because they're usually really tricky to handle in the spray gun. I was going to bend that rule because I really liked the look of the test tile on this, but I am just so concerned about all of the shaking and stirring warnings that they have on this thing that I'm worried if it's in the gun that it's going to settle out, and I just won't have time. So Spectrum glaze has been replaced by another Mako glaze, so today we're going to test 3 Mako glazes, and I'm going to have a 4th glaze coming tomorrow from Portland that I'm going to test, but that's not going to be here in time to go into this kiln mode. So, all right, let's do it! I keep track of all of my glaze testing using these underglaze pencils by Amico. They look just like a normal pencil, so don't put them somewhere where kids will get them because it's like a $10 pencil. But you can write down stuff on clayware and then fire it, and it lasts. Inside of each of my little glaze test critters, I will write down not only the type of glaze I'm using, but how I applied it, how many coats I put on, pretty much anything that I would want to remember, because believe me, after I fire it and these things sit on a shelf for a while, I would not be able to remember how I did this unless I wrote it down. In order to get glaze all over the small surface area of this little tester, I make these handy dandy paper handles. There we go, ready to go, easy to glaze. Safety first, glaze is dangerous, we don't want to breathe it, and we don't want to hear the loud spray booth, so suit up. So now we get into the kind of tedious nitty-gritty of glaze testing. It's going to be lots of very small batches of glaze that we have to spray and then clean the gun and spray again. So the process will be the same for all of our glaze tests. We connect the glaze pot to the spray gun and we begin to spray coats of glaze. We're going to look for, I think that we're doing 3 coats on the back side of these and 2 coats on the front. Now for the glaze to go on well, I want it to be dry, completely dry in between coats, so I'm using a heat gun to kind of speed up the process as we go. There we go, 2nd coat. Back with the heat gun, and then we do 3rd coat, and we're out. Now glaze is precious, so I want to get every little bit that I can back out of my little testing spray bottle and into the glaze container. Then I clean out the spray bottle. I know this looks wasteful, but after this test, we will not be cleaning this often. Got to get the gun completely clean, and then it's time for test number 2. So 45 minutes later, here is what we've got. We've got 1, we've got 2, and we've got 3. Now, these all look relatively similar. Well, I guess the two on the left do, but they're not. They're completely different colors. Glaze transforms totally in the kiln. So let's go put them in the kiln. The kiln in question is my itty bitty doll kiln. I use it for doing these test firings because one, it's a lot more efficient because I'm only firing such a tiny little thing, and two, it cools very quickly as opposed to the large kiln, which takes forever, as you will see later in this video. Okay, it is Saturday, and like many self-employed artists, I am working on the weekend. I spent the day designing the new Library of Libations, well, putting the final touches on the new Library of Libations project. I'm very excited about it, but I'm going to finish the day off by doing yet another glaze test. The first ones that we did are okay, but they're not grabbing me. I mean, I like this one. We're going to try playing with a little more, and I love the way that this one looks. Maybe for the inside of the mug, but I want to do a little more. Unfortunately, I'm all out of little tester guys. I do have this one that we poured just yesterday, but of course I still have to fire it. We're gonna start pouring one a day for the next week, so I'll have a whole new army to work with. In the meantime, I'm gonna use this. Haha! It is an old diving helmet from my deep sea diver mug. I used to use these as glaze tests before I started doing this. So I have one of those. We're gonna test it. I'm gonna be using a spectrum glaze. Let's all cross our fingers. All right, let's see how this one does. Now, do I have an idea in my head? I kind of do, but I'm not going to force it. If I come up with something else, like if one of these tests comes out cool, I'll go with it. But yeah, I am trying to work my way towards an idea. Maybe this will get us closer. Once again, we're using the doll kiln for the test firings, and I set this thing up. All of those hoses are for the vent system to vent the gases out of the kiln and to safety. Here we are the next morning after my Sunday long run, and things look pretty good. So here's where we stand after all the glaze testing. We've got this rainbow of glaze colors. Of these, my favorite are this one, and this one. So we're ready for round two. Actual AP glazes. First up, we're starting with the inside of the mug. Now, in the past, you may remember I like to fill it and then I suck the glaze out with the syringe. But look, the syringe doesn't fit in the mouth. So hopefully I can fix that with some tubing. Now, the tube I have does not fit the end of the syringe that I have. So we're going to do some creative surgery with the hopes that we can merge the tubing and the syringe end together. So with a little bit of sanding and then a little bit of creative beveling to help fit the pretty fat tubing into the pretty small opening, I was actually able to get this thing to work. I was very surprised that it worked, but hey, sometimes you get lucky. The last challenge was how long to make this tube. I wanted to reach into the very back of this little foot, and so that kind of dictated the overall length. And there you have it. Hopefully, this thing will be able to suck every little bit of glaze out of the inside of the mug and make application easy. Okie dokie, let's see if this thing actually works. As always, be sure to thoroughly shake your glazes before using them. And then we're off to the races. This is, of course, the first time I'm ever doing this, so do not judge too heavily my methodology here. I'm just figuring it out as I go along. I'm going to put in what I think is just enough to, swish around on the inside. I'm not actually filling this thing all to the top. I'm just rolling around a small amount of glaze inside, covering every single surface in there. And then look at this. Ha! There it is, the syringe in action. Now, does the syringe work? Yes, it does, but it is a tiny syringe, so I can tell you immediately after filming this, I went inside and ordered some massive syringes. This is a 50cc syringe. I ordered some 150cc syringes and some 200cc syringes. Hopefully I can suck all the glaze out with just one go using a larger syringe. So small syringe aside, other than that, it was a success. I did spill a little bit on the lip, which I'm cleaning up here with the sponge, but yeah, this guy's good to go. Okay, we've got the insides all done, and I'm going to need to let them sit here for a good 24 hours before I can apply the outside glaze. The clay's got to be totally dry. I'm depending on this porous, dry clay to wick the moisture out of the glaze to really get that glaze to bond to the surface of the clay. And right now, these are filled with moisture. You can even see there's a little bit of discoloration as they're wicking all the moisture and water out of the glaze that is inside of them, and it's kind of showing up on the outside. So yeah, these are going to need some time, so we will be back tomorrow. All right, we're going to begin glaze testing like we always do with extensive note-taking. It is Wednesday. It is the midday of the week where we give slip casting a day off. We let the molds dry out, and that gives me all day to focus on these, the AP glaze testers. They are now totally dry. The interior glaze is completely dried out, and it's time for me to put glaze on the outside. Now, we did 5 of these, and I'm going to initially kick off just testing 3. We're testing 3 different exterior glazes, and I want to see how it reacts with an underglaze. And based on whether these succeed or fail, we will then decide what to do with the remaining 2 castings that we have. I'm making a detailed list so I can keep track of what I'm applying, how it goes on, does it spray well, does it not spray well. I make as many notes now as I can because I don't want to open up the kiln tomorrow and be like, I just can't remember, did that spray well? I don't know. I want to know exactly what happened today because I'll forget. I forget really fast. Anyway, going to take some notes, and we are going to load up the spray gun and get some glaze on these. For all 3 of today's tests, I'm going to be doing a band of underglaze. I'm going to kind of do a faded band around the base of the mug, just kind of build up that decayed, dead look that I'm looking for. What exactly is underglaze? Well, underglaze is basically slip with a little bit of color added to it. It doesn't behave like a glaze. A glaze has silica in it. Think of glaze as colored glass, whereas underglaze is just colored clay. It doesn't have any of that glassy look to it. And you use it to build up colors beneath that glassy glaze surface. So here I'm just putting a nice faded green band. This looks like a bright green now, but after we fire it, it's going to turn to a dark avocado green color. At least that's the plan. After getting a green band on all of the AP tests for today, I have got to, of course, clean the gun. So we scrub everything out and get ready for our first application of glaze color. So applying these glazes is going to be just like it was for the glaze testers. That's why we did those tiny glaze testers to find out what works best, and now we're going to be testing it on the actual mug. So I'm going to spray the exact same number of coats that worked well in the glaze tests and dry it just like we did before with the heat gun, putting on more coats after that. You know the drill, and I bet you know what's coming next. That's right, it's gun cleaning time. In between each glaze change, we have to completely scrub out the containers, scrub out the gun, and get it ready for the next color. In addition to the gun in between each glaze change, I like to spray the glaze booth out itself. It keeps it nice and bright and makes it easier to see what I'm doing. Okay, there you go. It's been the better part of the morning, but when we actually pick a glaze and get into glazing the production line, it'll go a lot faster. We lose so much time changing out the glaze, cleaning the gun, cleaning the booth. That's a huge, huge time sink. So it's good to know that I only have to go through this once. Once we pick a color, it'll go smoother. At any rate, here we are. We've got some glaze on these guys. And the funny thing about, for me, picking glazes is it changes throughout the whole process. I'm drawing the mug. I have a thought in my mind of what I'd like the color to be. Then we do tests, and that kind of changes that thought. And then when I finally see color on these mugs, it changes my thoughts again. I was initially not going to do a satin black because I thought that's what the vintage original Suffering Bastard mug is. But seeing it on the mug, it looks nice. So I may do one in satin black. I don't know. We'll see. But let's get these in the kiln and see what happens. Okay, keep in mind as we load this kiln that this is not what the glaze will look like after it's fired. Glaze goes through a complete chemical change in the firing process, so this color is going to completely look different after firing. So I'm going to surround these mugs with a bunch of extra kiln furniture. Why am I doing this? Well, I want to replicate a fully packed kiln, and that means that these mugs would have other mugs all around them, and all those little objects would be radiating heat, which would mean things would warm up slowly and cool down slowly. And that's also why I'm putting this shelf on top. I want to replicate a packed kiln. All right, it is the next morning, and the kiln is tragically at 376 degrees, which means we have to wait until it is at least down to 200 degrees before we crack it open to avoid any thermal shock. This is the worst part, waiting. I'm gonna go cast today's round of Dead Bastard mugs and check back with this in a few hours. It's almost lunch, still waiting. It's getting there, but still waiting. Alrighty, it is at 225 degrees and I'm just gonna go for it. I cannot wait any longer to see what's happening inside. Now, glazing, you never know what you're gonna get. So I'm trying not to get excited about what's in here, but it's inevitable. I always get excited. So could be sad, could be happy. Let's just find out together. It's toasty, so gloves. All right. I actually like all of these. That never happens. Let's take a look at what we've got. And yes, my hair is insane. I am so desperate for a haircut. It's driving me crazy. But I imagine you all may be in the same boat. I don't know. So first up, this guy, like I said, I was not disappointed with any of them, but I like some more than others. This I like the least. Believe it or not, there are several types of glaze on here, but it just came out kind of one note, and I think the application was too heavy. I actually like the back, which I only did one coat on, and it kind of did what I wanted it to do. This was just too heavy. This is only 2 coats. So, next up, we have the green one, which I do think looks pretty awesome. It did what I wanted to do, but again, there are actually 2 tones of glaze here, and it just didn't read like I was hoping it to read. And again, the back is my favorite part, as usual. But last but not least, we have what is my winner of the day, and that's this guy. The 2-tone gradient came out perfectly, and it really matches the original concept I had for the mug. So I think that this may be our winner. I'm gonna do a few more tests, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with that one. Overall, some good glaze testing. The planning paid off for once. So here it is, the final Dead Bastard mug glaze. I could not be happier with it, and there's more. Now that I've got a finished piece, I can test out its hidden feature. It hangs on a wall. Perfect for those who are running out of shelf space. So we're going to wrap up this glaze episode with a glaze project that I've been putting off forever, and that is an actual storage space for all of my glaze testers. Up until now, they've been living on a windowsill, and I'm constantly dropping and breaking them. So I started building an actual rack in Adobe Illustrator, and I'm going to export these files to this, the Shaper Origin. The Origin is a fancy futuristic router that uses an electronic eye to track its position, and it compensates for my jerky hand motion. So here you can see it's like playing a video game. I'm just following that little blue dot, and I want to keep it inside of that blue ring, and then it will make a perfect cutout. Check this out. Perfect fit. I am still learning the ins and outs of this tool, and I will feature it on a future Tiki Technical Tuesday. Until then, just look at this incredible helixing feature. It creates perfectly deep, perfectly round holes for these pegs. I love it. Anyway, onto the Craig jig. I'm putting in some pocket screw holes to mount it on the wall. We use some very, very quick sanding because this is just for the studio, and then it's the pegs. And I mean, a lot of pegs. A lot and a lot. I want to have room for a lot of Booskas, and I, of course, have these digital files, so if I need to make more room, I can always just make a second shelf if I need it. Okay, it's time for final assembly, and just like with the laser cutter, it is always weird to see something that you have drawn on the computer take form in the physical real world. The Shaper tool is extremely accurate. The glue is probably not even necessary because, as you can see, things fit with a very tight tolerance. It's just really fun to put these things together. It's like making your own model kits. I picked a spot in the glaze room that I felt would be out of the way, and if I need to put a second or even a third shelf up, I can just slide this one up and stack the new shelves underneath it if I need the room. Anyway, these 4 screws will be plenty adequate to hold up the weight of all the little Booskas, and speaking of them, let's go grab them. They were super crowded on the windowsill, but now they have got room to breathe. Ta-da! It's a proper testing rack. So happy about this. It's something I've been meaning to do for years, and it's just one of those studio improvement projects that gets pushed and pushed and pushed. But hey, it's here. Super stoked. Thank you for hanging out with me on this glaze-filled episode of Tiki Technical Tuesday. If you haven't liked or subscribed, please do. It means a lot to me, and I will see you next episode.